I will call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock promptly. And I wanted to do something a little different today. You know, sometimes you get a little stagnant, boring, right? I am still going to say the board norms, but what I'd like to add to that is just kind of a refresher and a look back at what our vision is. So I'm just going to read our vision statement after I read the board norms. So board norms: maintain our focus, communicate respectfully, be present, keep the board productive and effective, and respect the agenda. And to that vision statement, in WRED, could that be any longer? All students will have an outstanding educational experience in a safe and welcoming environment so they may achieve and surpass their learning goals. The WRED is responsible to the needs of its community and provides the necessary systems, staffing, and resources needed to ensure that all our students will become informed, empowered, and engaged global citizens. So that is our vision statement and our board norms. So I would like to move to the next. Let's see, members of the public. Yeah, we have a couple pages here.
Al, you've got correspondence.
Oh, sorry, missed that. Did not get that on the agenda. So yes, let's go to the correspondence first. We did get, sorry, Bill, if you want to speak.
It's okay. We received a letter from Mary Beth Demansky. It is in your board packet. It's a very thoughtful letter, just that was also shared with Bob Tebow at Leland and Gray and myself at the central office, talking about the importance of students having in-person learning and the wish for that to be for the students of the West River Education District. And it will be included in the documents from tonight.
Great, thanks, Bill. And no action necessary out of that. It was more just the correspondence.
No, both Principal Tebow and myself wrote back to Mary Beth, and she was extremely appreciative of especially Bob's response. So I would just point that out.
Thank you, Bob. Can't see you, but I'm sure you're on there somewhere. There he is. Appreciate it. All right. Yes, many members of the public we have today. Thank you. Appreciate it. Always appreciate your input and you for being here and learning about what we do and raising concerns when necessary and letting us know what we're doing well. So moving on to new business. We have the FY22 budget review second draft that we are going to discuss. Mr. Chairman, Joe.
Yes.
Would you like to kind of explain what we came out of the budget committee with?
Certainly. As part of the board packet, you all have the budget exercise that we had as a board tasked the administration with, finding essentially the $500,000 that we were short in the revenue. We went through that and had a lot of discussion about it. And at the end of it all, we were uncomfortable making any sort of a recommendation that included a reduction in force without that being in front of the full board. So we were looking at using $300,000 from the reserves to buy down the tax debt for a single year. What also came out of that was a actual motion at the committee level to recommend to the board that we commit to changing how we commit to having these conversations, and I am not sure, I'd like to get a better definition for long, complex conversations. But we really, we kind of arrived at a decision that the board, the West River Education District and the board is at a literal binary decision point. We either take the path of, reducing offerings, reducing staff, reducing programs that was reflected in that exercise, or we actually commit to having a conversation about changing tradition and geography and how we deliver education in the district, or we're going to just be doing the same thing every year. And it gets harder and harder every year. And we discussed, Lori pointed out and did some illustrative work to show us that, while this year we needed somewhere around $400,000 to stay even, next year we would need significantly more than that, and that number would just continue to rise. So each year we would be facing deeper and deeper and more painful cuts. So that's where we are. That's our recommendation at this point. We certainly can discuss that and see if we can come up with a different solution here at the board level, but that's it. Did I miss anything, Al?
No, I think you're right. So it was 300,000, and really the 300,000 is an offset to the revenue that we lost, right? So at the end of the day, our budget overall increased by, Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, I saw the number moved 1.68%, I believe was the final increase in budget. So the 300,000 is really a plug to correct the revenue loss. Oh, you're on mute, Lori.
1.58, very close.
Oh, 158, sorry, it's off slightly. Great, yeah, and Mike, if I remember correctly, you were also in favor of the 300,000. If you just wanted to speak to that as well.
Yeah, I was. We all recognize that we have to do things different going forward. We need to have those broader conversations, and as a one-year thing, it's not my first choice. But it is something that I did agree to, and that's kind of where we are. If there's better options, I definitely want to hear them.
Great, thanks, Mike. And yeah, I mean, so Keegan, first I'll say, great job at the budget committee meeting. I think you really have brought us to that place where we need to make corrective action. Absolutely. And as Joe referred to during that meeting, I think we were well on that path, and then COVID happened, right? So we decided, all right, now's not the time or the place. A lot of unknowns, but certainly, as as was made in that motion, we need to start to look to the future very soon. As soon as we can get this done, this over, this passed, and in looking at all of the different things that we were presented at the budget committee, none of it, as Joe mentioned, will actually get us to a position where we're not above the excess spending threshold. Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, but that number is roughly $1 million. And at the end of the day, it's going to involve, as much as we hate to talk about it, we are not structurally built or set up to work with this current budget. We're just not. With the number of buildings that we have, it's not possible. And I think also coming out of the budget committee meeting, the alternate options that they showed of what are the most potentially efficient ways that we could run and operate in all of these existing buildings. And those two options gleaned, I want to say 175,000 and 250,000. Again, just kind of working on the margins, working on the edge, not really getting us where we need to be. So 100% agree with you, Keegan. We need to solve for that. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of looking at the traditions that we have, and maybe not. Some of those traditions are going to have to go away. Somebody is going to will have to yield, right? I would ask all of us, board members, to say, are we willing to take those steps to make those hard decisions, to not just look at what we've already discussed, but what if we do have to potentially close one of these schools that has been in existence for years and years and years? Are we willing to go back to our taxpayers and let them know that this is our position, our solution, to get to that next step? So again, 100% with you, but a lot of hard questions, a lot of hard answers in the near future. And I want to make sure that everybody on this board understands that we work collectively for the West River Education District. I know we speak to a lot of people in our own respective towns, but we work for the West River Education District. So that should be our objective. So anyway, long preamble. Apologies. Keegan, you made me think about this a lot. So, but that's kind of where we're at for now. Lori, I don't know if you want to kind of share the sheet, kind of showing that whole flow, kind of the 3-year comparison flow with the 300,000, or your thoughts on that?
I think probably if we talk through maybe just the changes, and at this point, I can take questions about the budget. The 3-year comparison, or the sheet that's similar to that, is really, at the end, when we're really down to brass tacks. But I can talk through where we stand right now with the budget, what slight changes were made from the first draft to the second draft, and then, what the tax rates are for the individual towns with the CLAs first. Great. And then we can look at that sheet, because that's sort of the playground, after the questions come out of, what happens if we do this, or what happens if we do that, then people can see how it trickles through.
Okay.
So
great.
So do you want to bring up the, I don't know who has control, but the budget overview presentation?
Joe, would you be able to do that?
Yes, that would be the PowerPoint, Lori.
Yeah, we won't go through the whole thing. We'll just touch on a few things that changed, and then just, have a good look at the tax rates based on the recommendation of using the $300,000 of fund balance, where that leaves everybody.
Okay, hold on a second. I didn't download it, so share screen. Got it?
There we go. All right,
okay.
So this.
Hey, Al, can you see hands, by the way, while we're talking?
I cannot, sorry.
Okay, because you had a couple earlier. They put them down, but there were some hands.
I had mine up.
I will let you know.
I was just going to ask if Lori would present this, or somebody would present this.
Sure.
Good question.
All right, so we'll go right to the next screen.
Well, maybe.
There you go. So the only other thing that was included in this is the recommendation by the Budget Committee to use the $300,000 of fund balance, and so that everybody on the call understands that For fiscal year 20, the unaudited, but pretty close, fund balance projection was 572,000. So that does leave some money in reserves, which is great because, you know, there are things that happen that come along, and it's always good to leave yourself some room. Let's see, nothing else really changed in this. So we can go to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, so what's not included? I did put this in the presentation just so everybody's clear on what is not in this budget. So there were no major programmatic changes that were made. The deferred maintenance, which we'll look at further in the presentation, including the structural work at Leland and Gray, is not included in this budget. And at this point, there is not really any long-term planning in this budget for any major construction or anything like that. Okay. Keep going. All right, so this is, of course, as of what we know today, which has actually changed from when I sent this out. So go ahead down one more. This has not changed though since I sent it out. So this is the expense budget year over year. It's up $190,000, which is a 1.58% increase, modest increase. Okay, we can keep going. And this is where you'll see that this number before was over $300,000. And by adding the fund balance, it increases our offsetting revenues. So it brings in more in line there. Keep going. So let's see, the equalized pupils did decrease a little bit, not a major decrease there. The new CLAs are all in the figures that we're using here. So, which there were some major changes there. So right now, as it stands, at $2.12, almost $2.13, I was able to find some exclusions, which reduce the penalty, not which then in turn reduces the tax rate a little bit. So it's just under $2.11 now. So not a lot, but every penny helps, every exclusion helps. So we're happy to see that. Okay, so here's where the towns, it comes into play. So that $2.12, how it flows through to the towns and the CLA. So on your right-hand side, your right hand, is what the towns would pay. So the first column is the CLA column, so you can see where the changes were there. Brookline had a large reduction in their CLA, which will drive the tax rate up. Jamaica had a pretty healthy reduction in CLA. Newfane and Townsend basically, you know, stayed pretty much the same. So the first column, or the next column over, is without any hold harmless, because I'm always going to show you what the tax rates look like without the 5% hold harmless, because that will go away when the incentives go away. So that's what the 212 tax rate will look like flowing through the CLA for all the towns. So now the hold harmless, the 5% hold harmless comes into play for Brookline, Newfane, and Townsend. And you can see how that affects the tax rates there. So, you know, I'll just, for people that have not been on the call before, Jamaica no longer qualifies for the 5% hold harmless. The very first year of the merger, their tax rate was was actually higher than everybody else's to start. So it was close to the cutoff for the hold harmless, is the simplest way to say it. And so they lost that incentive, and you don't get it back. So it's once you hit the target tax rate, is what they call it, then you don't get the 5% hold harmless. So there's a lot of discussion about what is the amount that we have to stay above so that these other towns don't lose that. And basically it's $2.05 is that threshold. Okay, so we'll keep going. It's unless there's hands, or I can't see any hands, so.
No hands.
Okay, so we did talk through a lot of these. Oh, you can keep going to the next slide, Joe, thanks. Okay, we talked through a lot of these programmatic asks and also the building. We talked through some of those. So I'm not, unless the board wants me to go through them all again, I will just kind of talk through these next few slides.
Lori, just a quick question on the Vermont adult learning.
Sure.
Were we able to find other means for that?
So actually, yeah, I believe that we can use the new ESSER funds that will be coming down the pike. ESSER, they're called ESSER 2, that should be coming soon as part of the recovery plan that we will have to submit to the state. So, and Al, you had asked me a question, which I think is very appropriate to talk about right now, is that Bob's idea is to bring, to bring back students, which actually increases the ADM, which increases your equalized pupil. So if it's paid for out of a grant, then that's the best way to do it, because it's a 2-year possible position. And jump in, Bob, if I'm misstating that, but it's great if it can be paid for by a grant, because then it's the revenue is gravy, so to speak. So so that's where I think that money could come from.
Would we see immediate benefits for that in FY23, or would that be not right away?
I guess I would leave that to Bob to answer.
Depends how you define benefits, Al. We would definitely see benefits for the kids immediately.
Right.
As we re-engage them, obviously, that's a no-brainer. And if the number of kids that we get back would be getting back starting right in the fall. So, I mean, if that impacts our ADM immediately, I guess our October census would reflect that, right, Lori?
Yes, that's correct.
That's great. So it would immediately impact us and potentially drive down tax rates.
It will only help to count more students.
Nice.
Okay.
That's great. Fantastic news.
So just a caveat, we don't know exactly how much ESSER funds we're going to get. And if you fund it for 2 years at $128,000, that's a $256,000 investment over 2 years. And that could be all of West River's ESSER money, meaning that West River could not invest in any other strategies. So just a caveat that we don't know how that would all play out. I agree it's a phenomenal idea. I agree grant funds are the way to do it for a 2-year stint, but we just have to be aware of the context in which some of that money may or may not be committed.
Got it. Thanks. Joe, I apologize. I can't see hands. So if you see hands, just certainly let me know.
Will do.
Thanks.
All right, I think we can move right along. And actually, I am going to skip through these because one of the tasks that we didn't actually get a chance to talk about in the budget committee, but one of the tasks that the board asked was to prioritize a lot of these. And there's a document that's in the board packet that Chris Medina put together that shows some priorities as far as all of these different deferred maintenance projects that need to be done. So we can go ahead and roll right through these. Okay, so then this was just informational about different buildings, how many staff were in the buildings, that type of thing, just so that the board can understand, and of course the public could understand how many staff, how many students are projected, that type of thing. So I think we can go ahead and roll through these.
Ken has a question.
You have a Ken McFadden hand.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Lori. Just before this, you had the two asks up there. One of those isn't happening, correct?
That was,
The adult learning part is happening, but there was a request for something for the future that's not happening. Is that correct? The 40,000?
right. I believe the board spoke about that at the last board meeting and decided that it was not the time to add more to the budget.
Okay, so that one's just there from the original.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, just looking at an overall student staff ratio here, informational again. And I think you can go ahead, Joe. Regional comparisons to that. Some information for the board, quick links. All right, so now the separate document that I sent, and I sent it as a separate document because in case it changes again.
Do you want that document up, Lori?
I think that if people have had a chance to look at it, there's a lot of notes on it, so I would field questions at this point about that document. You can pull it up if you want, Joe, but
Okay.
I don't know that we need to go through it line by line. I think people have had a chance to look at it.
Sorry. I'm wondering, Lori, if you would be able to, I see Joe's already switched screens, but I'm curious if you would be able to go back and just review one more time the proposed tax projections, as it were, just so folks can see like the true implications of, without the hold harmless, what that means for each individual community. I had written down that because Jamaica doesn't qualify for the hold harmless 5% anymore, I thought it was going to be $2.12, but I thought the screen showed $2.22. Can you speak a little bit more about that? I may have missed something.
Sure, no, I can speak to that. It's the CLA.
Thank you.
It's because of the CLA running through that. The CLA in Jamaica dropped. I don't have the number in front of me now, but 3% or so. So it's really also added to driving up the tax rate.
Okay. So the actual tax rate that the town of Jamaica would be looking at, I understand we're working as an entire district, as Al had indicated earlier, but Jamaica's property tax specifically would be allocated to the $2.22.
Yes, just let me grab that myself just to look here. Right, yes, that is correct. 10%, 10.8% increase over last year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You have Dana's hand, Al.
What, Dana?
Yeah, I know the thing is, I mean, we're all one big district, but there is a tax rate inequality to this. Jamaica residents are gonna have a hard time swallowing this pill. And I know we're trying to be all together, but it's going to tear us apart a little bit, and, especially if we reduce the building, what's intended to be toward Jamaica, taking away Jamaica school, it's a double whammy for us. So if you feel some heat coming from me and Keegan, it's because we get it from our taxpayers and our residents. So I understand we're all in it together, but it's going to tear us apart. So just throwing that out there, folks.
No, I can certainly appreciate that, Dan. And yeah, fortunately, the other three towns have the benefit of the hold harmless, but Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, is FY23 the last, or is it FY24 that we have?
So next year you drop to the 2% for 23. So in 24, there's no more incentives at all, right? So nothing comes off the tax rate directly, and there's no hold harmless.
In 24, not 23.
In 24, because next year you're at the 2-cent mark, right? This year you're at the 4-cent mark. So
Gotcha. Right.
Right.
So Dana, that's it. The the lifeboat is over.
Yeah, but we've
for-
already suffered 2 or 3 years prior to you guys suffering, and when we're all in it together. So, you know, we feel like we're sacrificial lambs. So sorry. I mean, that's the way our taxpayers are going to feel. And I know if you're going to count on us, we're going to feel really bad, you know, like we're not going to want to be part of the gang. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you guys. It's just it's how we feel around here.
I can totally understand that. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And we will definitely have to all collectively make very difficult decisions starting in April, as we've described, but probably sooner than that. Yeah.
Well, some of those alternative options might have to come in play sooner than we thought. I mean, if one thing was to happen, would it guarantee that it would be a lesser, let's say we did away with the Jamaica school, we took away that building. Would it be possible to reduce, would it have an effect of reducing the tax rate in Jamaica? You know, some Jamaicans might be willing to give up something to get something better out of it.
Well,
I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, I'll certainly let Lori speak to that. But if I remember, and I'm sure you'd probably have to update it, but I want to say when you reviewed that, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of high 300,000s to low 400,000s for overall savings throughout the district. So, I mean, that's certainly a huge chunk of where we need to get. Does that sound about right, Lori?
exactly, yeah. On the presentation, you know, there's a number there that looks at basically what the building costs are in Jamaica, or in all the towns actually, or in all the schools. But yes, between 3 and 4. Mhm.
You have a couple more hands out.
Oh, thanks. Go ahead, Joe. Who?
It's Patty Dixon and Ken.
Patty and then Ken. Go ahead, Patty. Patty, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
She's muted.
Okay.
I'm muted, but I'm unmuted. I wanted to thank Lori for all her concise and transparent explanations. You know, giving us if this, then this, if that, then that. It's wonderful. I'm just wondering now if Jamaica lost our hold harmless because our budget was too high. How does it work that Townsend and Newfane are trying to keep theirs high to more than 2.5 so they don't lose their hold harmless? That was the discussion that I watched the budget committee last night, and there was some discussion about Townsend worrying about going too low on their tax rate, under 2.5.
Right, that is the threshold. The you know, that first year out, it really was the tax rate, the unified tax rate. It's actually a fairly complicated calculation that has to happen, but the unified tax rate was less than what Jamaica's tax rate was from the previous, their equalized tax rate was from the previous year, and that's the comparison. So that's why they lost it the first year, where the others didn't. Townsend actually sneaked by with like 0.1%. that's how they held on to it. And, you know, it's just in the numbers, and it's comparing the previous year. And so that's what I did, was I looked ahead and I said, okay, well, if, you know, we look at the previous year's equalized tax rate, different from the homestead tax rate, which is what they use to calculate it, then 205 is where, you know, if Townsend drops below that, they're in jeopardy of losing that hold harmless. And it's a little bit lower for Brookline and Newfane, but they started a lot lower, right? So their tax rates before merging started lower than Jamaica and Townsend. Jamaica had the highest tax rate when you merged.
Okay. Yeah, I just feel it kind of strange situation that some towns are benefiting from a higher tax rate by not losing their hold harmless, but Jamaica's just out there dangling. You know, it just seems there's a benefit, I guess, to the whole district, but not really Jamaica, if they don't go below the 2.5. So that incentivizes having a higher tax rate. Am I right? Is that how that works?
Do you want to go ahead and answer that, Al, or you want me to?
Yeah, right. So yes, if we remain over 205, then all of the 3 towns would certainly benefit from that. But we're not even, I mean, to get to 205, we're talking about much larger cuts than we have right now. Right now, we're talking about 300,000 in essence to, you know, offset the revenues that we lost, and a very small increase in the overall budget of 1.58%. So we're not talking a huge budget here. So we're not, I don't want you to think that we're making sure, you know, we're holding back so that we don't go below a certain dollar amount. The cupboard is bare. I mean, we have cut to the bone. If you saw the budget committee meeting, Bill and Lori essentially laughed me out by saying, hey, can we get an extra 100,000 out of the budget? There's nothing else. There's no more room. So that's why we tapped into the and looking at.
So there's no positions that could be ended or let go or rift or whatever you say,
that was,
that are not that do not impact programming.
well, I don't want to speak to the programming piece of it,
yeah,
but yeah, but certainly, yeah, if you saw the budget committee meeting, we part of it was a presentation of from all the administrators saying, here are some potential areas, right? They certainly expressed that they do not want to take any of those actions, but those were areas that were identified, yes. And then plus on top of that, we had a couple other alternative options, which in essence restructured the use of the buildings by, Patty, I know you will remember this on that hot June day several years ago, where we talked about several different options, which would have, you know, been fairly disruptive to the normal way of life that we had gotten used to. But yeah, so there's some restructuring involved in those 2 options.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. I think Ken was next.
Yes, sir. 2 quick things. Last year we had pretty much the same thing with Jamaica's taxes going up, and then we went back and revisited, and I believe we redid the budget, so it wasn't as much of an impact on Townsend. Does anybody recall, or not Townsend, Jamaica? Do you recall that?
Absolutely, definitely recall that, Ken. Okay, and that is how we're in the current position of essentially having nothing else to go to. But yeah, go ahead. Oh, did I lose you?
He went dark and mute.
Okay,
Oh, there he is. He's back.
he's back.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, sorry, Ken. Go ahead.
No, I don't know. I froze up here. So anyway, so I'm just pointing out exactly that's why we're in this.
We lost him again.
Yeah. You faded out, Ken. If you can hear us.
Which is a good thing. Which, well, it will also be, all it takes is for two kids with needs to come in and that whole thing.
If Ken turns off his video, he might be able to be heard.
Yeah, Ken, if you can hear me, we can't
Here.
hear you.
Oh,
Try. Yeah, there you go.
can you hear me now?
That's a little better.
That would be
Okay.
the power of the host. I just turned him off.
Oh,
Thank you. Well, that's right, Joe. You never really turned me on. And no. Anyway, seriously.
I could turn off his audio too.
Oh, okay. So anyway, so we take this 300,000 out, then next year we're going to have, we're automatically going up 2 cents on the tax rate. Plus we have to make up that 300,000 just to break even. Okay. From this year's budget. So by taking that 300,000 out of there, all you're doing is the same thing that you did last year in Jamaica, and you're just going to get double smacked again the next year. Just pointing that out. So, you know, I mean, I'm not saying I have a better way, but this is no way either, because all you're doing is prolonging it for next year that you're going to get smacked twice with a bigger bill.
thanks, Ken.
We need more revenues.
Bob's working on it. Anybody else, Joe? Nope, good. All right. All yours, Lori.
Yeah, so here's the budget, the line item budget. You can see I highlighted in yellow where the transfer comes in. The other highlight is the other adjustment that I made with the tech center 6 semester average. So those numbers came in from the state, which were lower than what I had in there, which worked out well because it did solve one of the problems that I was discussing in the budget committee about the food program, you know, we've had a loss of revenues as far as the food program is concerned as well, federal and state revenues. So that increased. So I was able to move that. Basically, it was around $30,000 to the food program. So, so that's what I did there. So if we want to just scroll down through expenses, if anybody has any questions, there really were not a lot of changes other than the changes that were in the presentation as far as healthcare, negotiated increases, and you know, the supplies were returned to basically fully funded, and that is what makes up the budget. The only increase really from last year's budget to this year's budget was preventative maintenance for the HVAC systems that we put into each buildings or into the building operations. So that was really the only place that we, you know, you've had an investment in HVAC that was, you know, federal money that you were able to use to invest. So felt it was prudent to put in those preventative maintenance costs.
Great. Thanks, Lori.
Mhm.
You have Mike and then Ken.
Mike and then Ken.
Lori, earlier you mentioned that the columns work at LNG was not included in this, but I think I remember from the budget meeting that like that work would come from some sort of CapEx fund, right? There was a different fund that we talked about, so it might not show up here, but we're still moving forward with it, right?
Correct. Yes, there's between $50,000 and $60,000 in a capital fund that came together with the merger, and that's what could be used for the column work. The column work also could be, actually, I'm not sure the timing of it, but if it's done in this fiscal year, could come out of this fiscal year's money, which running ahead of budget right now. So that's another way to fund it without having to put it into next year's budget.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're moving forward with that.
I believe so. I know that Chris and I spoke, and he's on it. He's getting quotes back from engineers and things like that. So.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Good question, Mike. I think we all want to go from 10 years to 15 years with Leland and Gray, right?
Or longer.
Or longer, yes. Joe, who was next? I apologize.
That was me.
Yeah.
Ken.
All right. Quick question. I notice on here it says for property and supplies, and we have a $25,000 increase for, this is for, I guess it's for Leland and Gray.
Not necessarily. What line item is it, Ken?
It is, looks like 334.
Okay. Operations and buildings.
Right below that. Sorry.
Oh, right. Oh, you're absolutely right. That is for Leland and Gray, right? The snow plowing and field maintenance, right there. That needed to increase. That's an ongoing cost that hasn't always been captured, but we have somebody that does that, and really should be captured in there as a true cost.
I just find it, I just thought it was kind of odd that it went up, 200% in 1 year.
Yeah.
Since those usually stay pretty stable and, usually go up slightly due to cost of living.
Right. I believe it's contracted out now. That's part of the increase.
I was hoping you were going to tell me, well, there's a revenue that offsets that because that's actually part of that course that was going to be put in there, but you didn't tell me that, so now I'm sad.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Anybody else? No? All right. Any other discussion about what we've heard so far? Any questions?
Al, I just want to point out that your next meeting is scheduled for February 15th, which is also the final date that you need to warn a budget. So just as the chair, just understand that you have tonight's meeting. If you guys plan any other meetings, and then you have the 15th, of which you have to vote on the budget on the 15th.
Thank you, Bill. Very good reminder. Time is finite. Yes. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of the Budget Committee.
Al, I'm not comfortable with this budget as it is right now. I'm wondering if we can offer up additional suggestions or additional conversations where we can make some suggestions to the Budget Committee to have a few more cuts added. For a couple of reasons. First, again, the current highest property tax rate in the entire state of Vermont is out of Burlington. and it's $2.05. To put ourselves and our kids and our school district in a position where the town of Jamaica would have the highest property tax rate in the entire state at a projected $2.22 can't happen. This community doesn't have the ability to sustain that for 1 year, let alone for the next 3 to 5. So can I suggest to this board that we ask the budget committee to come back together and do more than just infuse the $300,000, perhaps using the budget exploration worksheet that was prepared by our admin team, and maybe, take a few, not suggestions, but ask our administration to take into consideration identifying a few of these items and removing them from the budget, perhaps. I understand we don't want to cut into programming, but I'm curious if we can further this conversation and perhaps come back with a draft 3 of our budget.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions? Or...
So I would be curious to see the initial ask that we had given to the admin team was to target $500,000. If we take into consideration the $300,000 one-time infusion, could we consider asking them, using this worksheet that they've already done the work with, to select $150,000 of their $496,000 reductions and ask for $150,000 worth?
It's a good question. Something we can, yeah. So great. So I hear you. Does anybody else have any thoughts, suggestions? And we'll go, obviously we'll take a look at it.
Well, 2 things, Al.
Sure.
Well, first I was going to tell you, you have Patty Dixon has a hand up. Dana waffled. His hand is up. Yep. Okay, Dana's hand is up. And second, I guess, was rather than push this back to the budget committee, this is the full board. We get to make this decision. Let's talk about these things tonight. I mean, we did talk about at the budget committee that, in addition to the reserves, the administrator position that was on this list was also on a list last year that it could have been cut. So, I mean, I know that, we're now talking about RIFs, but that was one that's been on the list for 2 years. It seems to me that might be something that's been identified, that it is possible to deal with not having that position. And I know in the discussions of that position being eliminated, the workarounds have already been designed and presented to us. So that would get us another 100,000 onto the 3, looking at that number that was just suggested. But I mean, we could look at what 400,000 in cuts would do to the budget in terms of the tax rate as well. And maybe we don't even have to look any further. So then you have those hands.
Patty and Patty and then Dana.
I was wondering, we used to do a thing when I was on the board where we would find out, say, the average house in the town, how much the actual dollar amount for their taxes might impact, how much they might pay in taxes, how much more than they're paying now, the actual dollars. That would be a very interesting thing to me. I don't know about anybody else, but
Patty, I am so glad you brought that up. So glad. Lori and I have had great discussions about this. And I will certainly let her speak to that. But yes, I think what you're referring to is income sensitivity. And there is a good percentage of folks in Jamaica that would never pay that tax rate. And that's based on property value as well as income. And I'm going to stop right there because I'm out of my depth, and I'm going to let Lori speak to it a little bit more.
Sure. If this would probably be the great segue into sharing that document, if somebody could give me sharing rights.
Working on that.
Okay.
Okay, Lori, you should be all set.
All right. Let's see if I can get this up. All right. Can everybody see the screen here?
I can. Al, you can add Howie to your hand list.
Okay, thank you.
So this is just my play document that I use. It's very, very similar to the 3-year comparison that you see in your tax booklet that you get at the town, typically town meeting or your annual report or annual meeting. So, you know, these are all the figures that are coming in from the budget. This is where we saw the expense, the offsetting revenue. This is where we applied the $300,000 there. So we can see what another 100,000 would do or another 200,000 would do. This is the incentive down here. And then down here is basically the calculations. So this right here is actually an example of Jamaica with a house with 2 acres appraised at $200,000, and the increase would be $410, $411 year over year, based on the tax rate, which is a little bit less than what we saw on the screen, because remember, I found some exclusions today that I've put into this. So 219 is the tax rate for Jamaica. Sorry to confuse you, Keegan. So not 222, but 219 at this point in time, okay? Changes on a daily basis. And then the income sensitivity is very interesting, and I want to talk really broadly about it because it's so individualized. It's very hard to say, you know, that the tax rate is going to go up by X amount, or you're going to pay X amount more in taxes. It depends on your income. It depends on your house value. But one of the things that I did find, which is interesting here, is the towns that we all serve here, including the other towns, will show you basically how many recipients, 243 recipients, received a tax credit on their tax bill, okay? The average house site value, again, the house and 2 acres, 192 in Jamaica. This was the average tax in Jamaica. This is for last year. And this was we're not going to talk municipal, we're only talking education at this point. This was the average education tax credit that came off of somebody's tax bill, right? So, you know, what I was starting to gather, actually Meg was doing some work for me on it. It became actually a complicated task, was how many taxpayers, how many Vermont residents are in all of these towns, so that I had some comparison to how many recipients received the tax credit. So you all could probably tell me a little bit better how many, you know, taxpayers there are in Jamaica and Newfane and all of those. But in general, when the per pupil cost goes up, then everybody's taxes goes up, whether you pay on income sensitivity or whether you pay your homestead tax rate. Okay, They go up at different percentages. And again, that's based on income. So does that help, Patty?
Sort of, but it's still, even at $400 a year, it doesn't take long before that's $1,000 increase. You know, it's a lot of money. And there's a lot of people who are not eligible for that. If it's only 200 and some odd people or homes that get that, that's, you know, I don't think that's even half of what Jamaica has, but I'm not sure. But I think there's a lot of people who pay the bill and few who don't. And it's unfair to the people who pay the bill to be saddled with a huge tax increase, I think. But
I can speak to the specific numbers of the town of Jamaica. I stopped down at the Jamaica Town Clerk's office and I asked these similar questions, and the data I received was there are a little more than 450 property owners, so residents within the town of Jamaica, and less than half of them are the ones who qualify for a degree of the income sensitivity or that have received a credit. So if there's a little more than 450 total residents in the town of Jamaica, 243 of that number, so less than half, qualify for that piece. Or excuse me, there's a little over 207 roughly that would have to pay the full rate. So while I appreciate the information around the income sensitivity, I do think that's an unfair indicator of how hard is this property tax rate is. I think it's an unfair measure, because if you want to talk about income sensitivity, we should really be thinking about the actual property tax rate, which is the $2.22. We should be having the actual conversation around how do we bring down our cost per pupil spending, as opposed to focusing on how much people in Jamaica make compared to their property values, and, you know, making it feel less bad that way.
Well, Keegan, fair or unfair, we're just laying out facts. These are facts. There's no fiction here. There's no, I don't understand.
I was just saying that while facts are facts, 243 is still a number, but the other portion of our town's population, the other 207 residents, do not qualify for this. So letting them know that there could be some wiggle room in what their tax owed is, it doesn't matter. The tax rate is what it is. It's still going to be updated number $2.19. It's still going to be the highest property tax rate in the entire state. It's still going to be 14 cents higher than Burlington. We're still overspending. Our cost per pupil spending is still over the threshold. Like we're still in the same boat, however you want to look at it. The numbers are the numbers. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, and Keegan, we talked about this. You're right. We have to make changes, but we don't want to make changes on top of a foundation that is broken and shattered because we cut so drastic and so deep. Yes, in the future years, we have to evolve. We have to potentially close buildings. We have to restructure. I mean, and those are all exciting things to talk about and to think about, but towns are going to have to make decisions. You know, what if we decided at the end of the day that we want to go to one campus? That would mean that potentially all of the elementary schools that we currently have in place are going to have to close. Right. So those are all difficult choices that we're going to have to make in the upcoming years. And all I'm asking is right now, we don't break what we have.
I
So.
Personally, I can't support just a $300,000 one-time infusion and leave it at that. I cannot support that because it's not financially responsible, and I don't think it makes much sense in the long term. If anything, I think it puts us in a more precarious situation next year because we don't have that $300,000 within the reserves. We used it one time to buy down a tax rate without making any change. And if we're going to have the conversation here, as Joe had suggested that we could do, I feel that we should make a commitment tonight to identify.
You muted yourself. To identify.
Actually, I did that. I'm sorry. I was trying to put your hand down, but I muted you instead.
Yeah.
Cut it out, Joe. Cut it out.
Jeez,
Total
Joe.
accident. I was putting hands down because I have a list. It's Dana, Howie, Keegan, Emily. And I was
Okay.
putting hands down, and unfortunately, I misclicked.
Okay.
I
Great.
won't do it again.
Good. I think we got your point, Keegan. So yeah, let's go to Dana.
I'm going to kind of agree with Keegan. I want to look at a second look at some of these things. And, you know, we had these different options, these alternatives. I would like to play those out. I may not want to close the school building, but for the sake of saving this district, we might have to be a little more aggressive in doing this. So is there any way we can play these out more?
Yeah, absolutely, Dana. That we are here tonight to do that. As mentioned by Joe in the budget committee, we did not want to discuss.
I know,
involved
but
RIF, so we're here. Yeah, absolutely.
Joe.
Well, just from the budget committee thing, just to clarify, the options that you're talking about playing out are where we move buildings around, like the
Yeah.
alternatives. We didn't think that there was we didn't think that we could necessarily, I mean, the board can make that decision, but we would not be able to go out and solicit any input from the towns other than this meeting and the February 15th meeting, and the board would have to make the decision and change how buildings were utilized and do those things. And we weren't comfortable making that suggestion without input from the towns. That was part of we can't really make those level of changes without talking to our constituents. And to get it done for this year, we have till February 15th to do that. And it just wasn't possible. That's why those scenarios are kind of like, that's a good start to the conversation we have to have for the planning that's going to go on next year. Unless we want to, as a board, take it upon ourselves to just do that, which the budget committee was not comfortable doing. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that because that was part of our discussion.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Joe.
And I understand that, Joe. I know our constituents would have our hides if we did something they all didn't approve. I was just, you know, for the sake of saving, you know, tax rate, saving one town, you know, just trying to make some dollars and cents out of this so we don't, you know, destroy ourselves.
Got it. Thanks, Dana. Howie.
You had add Katie Hazelton to your list.
Lori, can you explain and tell us what the impact is on Wyndham?
Oh, yes, I can, actually. Just did that earlier today. Hang on one second. Sure. So interesting conversation I had today via email. So the board voted to present one budget and one warning for one K through 12 budget, but I still have to break everything out because of Wyndham's only being taxed on the secondary. So I worked with the state today to figure that out, and Wyndham's rate, hold on one second, is 67 cents is added to your tax rate, your K through 6 elementary tax rate, which comes in at 109. So you're at 170 after CLA, 176.
Okay, thank you very much.
which is right around where we thought you'd come out. So,
Thank you.
And Emily.
Thanks. This was just a question for Lori based on what Keegan was just saying. Lori, is it true, or do you know if it's true that still 2/3 or approximately 2/3 of taxpayers in Vermont actually pay based on income as opposed to property taxes? And if so, that puts the numbers that Keegan mentioned about Jamaica at a much different level. And so I was just curious about whether you knew anything about what that was, because it's always been about 2/3, approximately 2/3.
right. I think statewide that I have heard that number as well.
I was talking statewide. Thank you.
Yeah, right. But individual towns are, obviously the percentage is up and down.
They are. I just wanted to point out the difference between what is an average for income sensitivity. And I'm not questioning Keegan's numbers. I'm just saying that it is certainly quite different from what the statewide rate is.
All right, thanks. Joe, I think you said Katie Hazelton. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Katie.
Good morning, Al. It's actually Drew.
Uh-oh.
As I sit here listening to the discussion, can you hear me?
Kind of in and out.
Oh, can you hear me?
Not really.
So hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me now?
Got you now.
Now? So my concern is that this is the exact same conversation that this board had a year ago, where we were looking at excessive per pupil spending. We were looking at tax rate increases of 10+%. We were looking at a situation which was going to create a fair amount of pain for last year with Jamaica as well. And we had the same conversation about how it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference because, income sensitivity. We had the same conversation about how we can't do much about it this year, but next year, dang it, we're going to go ahead and take care of this problem. And I'm just curious, since, I haven't been able to attend the board meetings, why have we kicked this ball, forward another year and we're having the exact same conversation? It seems like we, if anything, may have missed an opportunity during this pandemic to look at our school system and redesign it to a cost-efficient model. I mean, our buildings have been closed. My kids haven't been to school in 300 days. It would seem like it would be a good opportunity for us to look at a new model that's cost-effective for the community and not just put a budget together that reflects the same reality as last year.
Good question, Drew. I would say we did not kick the can down the road. It was more of, as you just alluded to, the pandemic. So many unknowns. We wanted to get through the pandemic so that we could have the hard conversations. There's just too many things going on within towns right now, and of all people, you're at the forefront of it and you see it day in and day out. So yeah, that was really kind of the reasoning, just to respectfully hold on making any long-term decisions. But now we have it on the docket, and yes, we're going to address that very shortly as soon as we get through this.
Quick follow-up. Is there any innovation or change in this budget based on what we've learned from distance education? It would seem like after a year of this, we should have an understanding of how to do it and ways to kind of be creative and innovative. Is there a section of the budget that reflects that innovation?
Laura, if you want to tackle it now.
They're the same programming that we ended before the pandemic.
Can you give an example of the innovation that you're referring to, Drew?
Well, I think that what we've learned is that, you know, for example, right now we're offering, I know AP programs that are being done remote, though maybe not as ideal as we'd like. You know, we talk about in order to cut the budget, we have to cut programs, but we also have managed to make these programs happen through other electronic means. And I think that as we look at a time where the pandemic has caused pain not only in the education system, but in the community. There's many people that can't afford to pay their bills. If you look at the article in the newspaper today about expanded food programs for people that are hungry in our community, looking at a 10% or 20% increase in property taxes is certainly going to make that decision between food, heat, and medication that much more difficult for everybody, whether it's a $400 increase for income sensitive seniors on a fixed income or a $2,000 or $3,000 increase on people that are not income sensitive. It's going to be very challenging. And I think missing the opportunity to incorporate the innovation that our teachers and administrators have figured out this year is a lost opportunity. We know how to do this. We've, again, 300 days since our high school kids have been in the building. We should be able to come up with something that's more cost effective, but still provides the educational opportunities.
Thanks, Drew. I don't know if any, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to let you know you've got a hand.
Okay, I think it was Paul. Did you say Paul Fraser?
Fraser.
Paul Fraser. Go ahead, sir.
Am I allowed to ask a question since I'm not a member of the board?
Of course you can.
I'm just a member of the tax-paying faculty family here.
You're one of the most important people then.
Sure, I'll say. Here's the thing I'm missing, and I'm missing that from the conversation because I haven't heard everything you guys have talked about. But it seems to me that there's two walls here. One is let's have the taxpayers pay more and more money. And the other one is let's not touch any of the sacrosanct programs that make everybody feel good that are costing us money. We're just going to fluctuate around the tax thing. I am not quite sure. And people who know me know I'm extremely supportive of international education and travel for our kids. I don't understand why we are paying for a Chinese language program when we're having to worry about how to feed the kids. I'm missing that connection. Perhaps we're maybe making these programs. There's going to be some hurting people. You close a school, a lot of people are going to hurt. You close a program, people are going to be hurting. It's not ideal, but it beats the heck out of strangling the fixed income citizens on any of the town rosters. I don't understand that. Perhaps either you can explain it to me or figure out a way that maybe those sacrosanct programs aren't as immovable as they may seem. Excuse me, seem.
Paul, it's a great point, and you're right. It's one of those very difficult things that we always have to balance is what is best for our taxpayers and what is best for our children. We certainly, I don't know if you're here when I read our mission statement, but certainly kids are at the forefront of all of our decisions, and part of that decision making is around programming. What great programming do we have that sets us apart from other schools, other districts? How do we differentiate ourselves? How do we attract people? Those are all things that come into play. And if once you kind of water yourself down to losing certain things that make you unique, such as Journey East, then you become less attractive as a school district. And you're absolutely right. You have to balance that with, are we impacting our taxpayers too much? So that's the difficult decision and choices that we always have to make. And that's certainly part of what we're going to have to make. Certainly getting the temperature of the room and the audience. And at this point, I'd like to ask our leader, Bill Anton, if you were to look at anything on that list that we reviewed at the budget committee, is there something that we could go over tonight, Bill, that would equate to, say, $100,000?
Yeah, we discussed this at the budget committee meeting, and if the board wanted me in my position to identify $100,000, it would be my recommendation to reduce an administrator and in the West River Education District for $100,000. And if you want to look for money beyond that, I am prepared to give my input on that as well.
Thanks, Bill. Lori, would you be so kind as to see what that would look like for us?
Sure.
You have Lindsay, then Keegan. Al.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
So reducing another $100,000 would get you to basically 208 from where you are now.
208. Okay. Okay, and the other question I would have is on the proposed yield. I know the yield will have an impact on the overall rate as well. I assume that there's the potential that that yield could go to 10,878 as you have indicated.
Right. The yield tends to go up. This is somewhere in the middle between what it is now and what it was last year. So, you know, just for curiosity's sake, you're at 206 if the yield goes up with the 100,000 and the 300,000. So 400,000 total in additional funds to lower the cost per student or tax rate, and then the yield increasing.
Okay. One other factor I'd like to tease out, Bob's Vermont Adult Learning. What is the potential that we add 1 or 2 to ADM?
Well, that wouldn't affect this.
Not
tax
affect, okay.
No, it will. You know, Bob was saying that the students would be counted next fall. So that would affect your next year's budget, your fiscal year 23 budget.
Okay, so not this budget. Okay.
Not this budget, no.
Great. So where does that put us at with the, I'm sorry, could you do that 10,878 again? And then scroll down to everybody's tax rates. So that would put Jamaica at 213, a 7% increase. And 206 for Townsend, which would still allow us to hold on to the hold harmless.
So yeah, so none of the bottom would change really. It would just be up here. You would see Jamaica's change.
Okay. Great. All right. And sorry, I know we have hands, so let me go to
It was Lindsay and then Keegan.
Lindsay, then Keegan.
Thank you, Lori. That was half of my question right there. You're always so on it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Also, Bill, could you, just for the public that hasn't heard that budget committee, at least speak just about the LNG admin, what that means and how it's being made up for theoretically?
Certainly. So if we were to reduce a administrator, we currently employ 5 administrators, we would employ 4, and it would be my recommendation of design to have 2 administrators at Leland and Gray and 2 administrators in the elementary schools. Currently, we have 2.6 at Leland and Gray, and we have 2.4 in the elementary schools. We have a split position. So in the elementary, I would design a system where you'd have 1 principal who would be responsible for a building that housed our pre-K program, if we are currently constructed as we are, and 1 principal who would be responsible for Newbrook and Jamaica. And then in the high school, middle school, we would have 2 administrators to cover the 6 through 12.
Does that answer your question, Lindsay?
Thank you.
Great. And then Keegan,
Yep, I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page.
thanks.
You had made a comment earlier, Al, about wanting to be an attractive school for potential students. I think it's important to also remember that we can't really attract homeowners if we have exceedingly high property tax rates. And I would think that we would want to be cognizant of attracting families to our communities as opposed to soliciting and throwing another offering into the availability for kids that have the opportunity to choose what high school they want to go to. I think we need to be thinking about our communities and building up our neighborhoods and relying on having homeowners to sustain and build up our student base. I think it's an unfair ask considering like the number of choices that a choice community does have, where they can think about all of the available options. I think that's a pretty tall order because you're really comparing, like not every school is in like the same caliber of geography, of offerings, of sports, of different, you know, they're different ponies and in different horse shows, right? So I would just be cognizant of we would attract with a larger net if we made our communities a place attractive enough where people could afford to establish their families and then utilize our school systems that way.
That's a great point, Keegan. And that's the fine balance that we are always trying to work with, right? What is the right equation? And we come to this point. I would advocate that as part of this long-term planning, something that we need to do is definitely get much closer with our communities, with our select boards. How do we draw and attract business to our region? You know, part of that is by having good schools. I mean, just dreaming a big dream here, but what if we actually had a career center in this area as opposed to sending down to Brattleboro, right? So those are some things that we can think about to attract people. And what would that do at the end of the day? We'd have a higher tax base because we'd have more businesses in the community and therefore our tax rates would go down. So that's my objective. Sound good?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You have Dana next.
Dana.
Bill, that one administrator running 2 elementary schools, could they possibly have a backup with a teacher, senior teacher getting, you know, helping that administrator out?
Yeah, if I was able to design it, it would have a lead teacher in Jamaica and have a principal that was responsible for both Jamaica and Newbrook. Because it would be necessary to just have a constant presence on site of a responsible party. It wouldn't be near the cost of an administrator, but there would be a nominal stipend to provide support.
But that admin principal would be like oversight of that teacher, more or less, just not on premises.
Absolutely, they would do all supervision and all evaluation and all leadership, but they would essentially have a partner on site.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
All right. Oh, sorry, Keegan, I see your hand.
Thank you. I just had another question. Hearing what Mr. Fraser had said about his concerns regarding the Chinese language program and the Journey East, can someone tell me a little bit more about what the local contribution is, the $31,000? Like, what exactly does that go towards?
Bob, do you want to take it or you want me to?
So we have within our social studies department, the person who oversees the program. And so basically her role revolves from year to year, depending on whether or not it's a travel year or a receiving year of the exchange. So on the year that they travel, about 2/3 of her job is spent towards the Journey East, and on the Actually, I'm answering the wrong question. This is the staffing implication of this, correct? The question you're asking is the $31,000
Right,
local
not,
contribution. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
not asking about the staffing. I
Yep.
appreciate those positions. I'm just curious what the local contribution is and how
Sure. Yep. So this is the amount that was deemed a while back. I mean, before I arrived on the scene, that was the amount that was necessary in order to keep the program solvent. So students pay their portion of the amount to go, which is about $2,000 each for each family to go on the trip for the month. And some of it is paid for by the exchange. So the university in Inner Mongolia also pays a certain amount of money to host us and put us up while we're there. But this was basically the balance. This is how much is needed annually to make that excursion go. And I believe it also includes money that we need when they also come here. And Lori can maybe speak to more detail about that, but there's expenses that we have when they arrive on the off year as well. So that's what that money goes towards.
Right. So the other piece of it is on the off year, the contribution is reduced to $18,000. This, and as Bob said, this is way before he or I were here, that this was the amount. You know, we've looked at the program, and because of not traveling this past year, you know, the program is in pretty good shape. However, there have been reductions in the amount of Chinese students that we're getting tuition for. So if that piece doesn't pick up, that's another piece of the puzzle as to how to pay for the program and in whole.
Once the original Freeman Foundation grants went away, the people at the time found this as an alternative way to fund it was to also bring in tuition students to us. But obviously those numbers have been down, particularly obviously none this year, but those numbers have been below what they expected to be as well as from that program. So the loss of the grant and then the decrease in tuition revenue, this local contribution is what makes the program function in essence.
Can I ask a follow-up question? And this is related to, I know in our last conversation that we had about the Journey East program, that it serves 8 students a year for a total of 16 students in total for the cycle. Is that accurate, or I might have my...
Yeah, we said that was an average. So yeah, if they take 16 or 18 kids every 2 years, that would be the average yearly. But yeah, the trip only goes on every second year. On the off year, the exchange comes to us, and they come with their performers, and we host them in our homes, and they come and perform in our community and travel around the United States.
And are you anticipating them coming in during this upcoming fiscal year where we would need to have this money, or are you still kind of...
Well, the fiscal year that you're budgeting for right now is our travel year. This current year right now was the year they were supposed to come to us, because if you remember last spring, in the last fiscal year, we were supposed to go to them, and that trip got canceled. So so far there's been a trip to there canceled, and now a trip to us canceled. And so the next year, the year that you're planning, would be a new plan to travel there.
So this $31,000, if it were to remain included within the budget, would fund students to go this coming spring for, it would be like the spring of, what is it, 22?
Correct. Yep.
Are you anticipating that happening, or when would you be able to tell us if for sure this trip was going to take place? I know that the pandemic is still a thing and we're still holding out on vaccinations. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, my gut is if vaccinations are rolling through into the summer and people are in good shape, I mean, a lot of it depends on what China allows as well, and what their university is willing to do. Because culturally, Inner Mongolia is a different animal than the Chinese. I mean, it's in China, but it's a different cultural animal. So I would hate to even predict, but I would say I'm incredibly hopeful that we're going to move forward with the trip. As I said in the budget committee, we also have a number of students who were on the plan to go this past year who are, some of them, you know, have aged out and graduated and such, but, or will this year. But there's a number of younger students who would potentially go into it again to go on the trip that was taken from them the previous year because of the pandemic. So, but yeah, I'm hopeful, but I mean, you never know, this new strain, I mean, who the heck knows?
Thank you.
I think I have Lindsay.
And then, well, you had Jesse Riemenschneider and then you have Dana, but I'm not sure, Jesse might be out.
We'll call on her.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I just was hoping that maybe Bob could speak a little bit more about the tuition students for Journey East. And I know that we talk about Journey East as being something that's really unique about Leland and Gray, and that it's something that we are anticipating as being a draw for students who may look at that as like, okay, this is why we want to go to this school. And I'm wondering if you can, like, do you have firsthand knowledge of people that have purposely come just for this program, or like how real is that? Or is that something that we say like, wow, this is awesome because we think it's awesome, but maybe we don't have any tangible data?
Yeah, no. We have tangible data of these students. We had one this past year who came and actually got stuck here and had to and ended up living with a staff member through the summer because they couldn't go home. But you know, it's a real tangible thing. So we have, so when the Freeman, and you were around, I think when the Freeman Foundation was in its infancy with this program, when it started in '99, when the Freeman Foundation started to pull away money from it, I think it was probably Tom Connor at the time who decided that the way to, the new best idea was to solicit exchange students from China directly. And the idea is that they would come, their families would pay tuition, which included a room and board fees, which we would send back to the host families to help with room and board. And so, but we would keep a portion of that money, obviously, to pay for tuition. And that money went directly into the Journey East Fund, which would continue to roll for those 2 years. And then there'd be a trip, and then it would build up again, then there'd be a trip, and then it would build up again. You know what I mean? So no, those were real students who came. They're not part of a normal exchange, like a normal exchange program is a 1-year program where a kid comes from another country through a licensed agency, and those students typically come and we don't gain any money from those. We gain experiences. Our kids get cultural experiences from having those students around, and maybe you remember some that were around when you were a student. I could think of a couple really interesting ones that were around. They were very cool kids. So those kids come and go, but this was a different animal. This was really through the Chinese. It was through Spiral exchange initially that Tom Connor had set up, and those numbers have dwindled. In fact, I believe Jesse and I made a presentation to the board a year and a half ago, maybe, about our concern about the dwindling cost of those tuition students, so the dwindling revenue, I should say, of those tuition students, and wondering what to do and where to go from here. And you know, they gave us a couple of years really of wiggle room to kind of figure stuff out. And of course the pandemic hit and everything kind of went into pause. But yeah, no, those are real unique kids who came with dollars in their pocket to our school.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jesse, if you're out there.
Then you have Dana, Patty, and Ken.
I am out here, and Bob had actually answered most of what I wanted to say earlier, but I'm the director of the Journey East program currently, so I did want to say a few things. One of which is that the benefit that Journey East has to the entire district as far as cultural experiences, and one of the few opportunities that the entire district actually gathers for at one time, where they see the Mongolian performance, as well as the cultural experiences they get through having people from a foreign country living in their homes and meeting them. So I just kind of wanted to state that up front. The other piece is, I think, to Lindsay's question about, do we get sort of students who come just to do the Journey East program, or do they stay at Leland and Gray for that? Because I think that was the other part of her question. Is that accurate? And that's, we do also get, so on the last trip, we had a student who actually returned from Burr and Burton to just for the trip. We also had so that was 2 trips, sorry. And also a student from Twin Valley. So we have students who do come from other schools who want to come for Journey East. And the other piece of that is we have kids who stick around at Leland and Gray because the Journey East program is an option that they want to pursue. So I think that that's the 2 important parts as far as students is that we have kids who, because of the exchange program, as far as they've seen these Mongolians perform in their school since they were like 5 years old. So they've been waiting their whole lives to like do this trip. And it's really a unique experience that I do think goes beyond just how much money we pay for the kids going on the trip. So I wanted to kind of state that for everyone.
Thanks, Jesse. I've got Dana, Patty, and Ken.
I just wanted to ask Bob, the Chinese program, the Journey East, is benefiting what, about 16 students. But I was wondering if more of the student population, you know, they got access to the Chinese program, but they didn't have to presently, they didn't have to join the Journey East part of it and go off to Mongolia, but they could get the Chinese part of it, the language and stuff.
The Chinese language program is a separate entity from the Journey East program. I mean, they're intertwined, obviously, because the students do take Chinese language before they go, but many other students, including the entire middle school, do take Chinese as well in the language program that are not at all Journey East students.
Well, you know, kind of tying in the Journey East, if they were thinking about, you know, if we thought about cutting a program, I'd hate to cut the Chinese language part of it, because if that's benefiting a large amount of students, you know, if we had to lose one end of it or something, you know where I'm getting. I hope I know where you're getting with it.
Yep, I do, Dana. And so when we talked about this in the budget committee meeting last week, the programs that we listed for possible reduction, one thing that the administrators are very clear about is that we didn't endorse any of those reductions. And so I just want to say that again. The Chinese program one we selected in particular because of enrollment numbers were lower than they were in Spanish, for example. And so if you were going to reduce one language, you would typically have the one that was the least impactful to kids, which would be based on numbers. So that would be the Chinese program. But certainly, you know, could the Journey East trip happen without the Chinese language program? Probably. Would it be as strong? Probably not. I mean, those are things you have to kind of think about. But but that's why it was listed on that list. It wasn't because it was tied to the Journey East, but more so because of the small numbers in the program.
I'd rather keep the language program and eliminate the trip to, you know, if I had to pick the two, if I had to pick one over the other, I'd rather keep the language, see the language and, you know, get the most benefit for the most kids. Then,
yeah, and again, I don't envy the position you guys are in. I will point out that one of the things about the Journey East program that you guys identified as one of your values when you did your initial board formation and value statements that you made. You guys identified that as one of your values. I know there's been some board member changes since then, but it was hanging up in the library for several years on that list of things. So I just want to point that out to you as well. But yeah, I don't envy the position you guys are in. It's tough.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Bob. I've got Patty, Ken, and I think I saw Paul Fraser's hand.
Jesse covered my thing. I do know that the Journey East program has brought a lot of kids from outside our district. At one time, all of Wardsboro came to Jamaica pretty much to go to Journey East, and the kids have come and stayed throughout the 4 years in order to do that. So it did, I don't know why it's not bringing in more kids from outside the district now. I don't know if there's a way to build it up somehow, but it did bring a lot of kids from outside the district.
Thanks, Patty. I've got Ken and then Paul.
Okay, 2 points. First point is this influx of students. Okay, there's only what, 8 kids a year, so 16 kids over 2 years, students. So I can't see a gigantic influx of students there. Because how many of our, why would we be running a program just to import kids just to go to a Journey East trip and stick around for a year or two? That I don't, I want to know exactly what those numbers are, that there's such a big influx. And the second thing is, originally when Journey East started out, I believe we were the only school to run something like that. And I believe that it was brought up at the last time this subject was brought up, that there are other schools that offer more. And that's where those students that from China are going to, instead of going to Leland and Gray. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Bob.
So 2 separate questions there. One, let me just clarify, the students coming here for the Journey East program, that changed over the years, and this is maybe what Patty's referring to, as the state changed its rules on high school choice. So back in the day when this program started, students could opt to come here from another school, and that school could agree to pay tuition for that student to come. And so revenue was generated by those students coming into our district. Once high school choice was created as a statewide option, students could then come for a year or a semester, and Leland and Gray gained no income from that. It's part of the state high school choice law. And so the student that Jesse referenced coming from Twin Valley, for example, did not bring any revenue with her when she arrived. She just came as a student. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But the second part of what you're talking about has to do with the Chinese tuition students, which is another animal. One of the things I did mention, I think I maybe mentioned this in the budget committee, which may be what you're thinking about. Because we're a public school, we, through the State Department, are only allowed to entertain these students for a 1-year student visa. Private schools have the added advantage of being able to allow them in for a 4-year visa. So Vermont Academy, Burton, Long Trail, those schools that are nearby to us can bring those students in, pay full tuition, house them, and allow the students to stay there for 4 years. So if a family is looking to send their student from China to the United States for schooling, for high school, let's say for all 4 years, Leland and Gray is not going to be a viable option, nor is any other public school for that matter. If they're coming for a 1-year exchange, then we become a very viable option in that regard. And the Journey East program and the relationships we have in China make us a desirable point for that. And Tong Chen, our Chinese language teacher, has been involved in helping to recruit in China through her connections there, as well as relationships that Tom first initially set up and now Jesse maintains with people in Inner Mongolia. So those are a couple different answers, a couple different questions simultaneously. I hope that helps.
So what you're saying is it is not as robust as it used to be.
That is correct. The revenue is not flowing in like it once was, even prior to the pandemic. And that's why we came to the board a year and a half or so ago to explain that to you guys, so that you could make some decisions around whether you were committed to the program continuing and what sort of commitment you would have to make financially for the taxpayers to make that happen, or whether you didn't want to go down that road at that time. Now, at the time, I think Lori gave us a couple of years because the fund was in decent shape at that point, that we had some flexibility even if tuition revenue went down. And so that's kind of why we're still around right now. And so the pandemic hasn't helped. Any hope of getting any students this year, of course, was dashed. So another hit has been taken, but we also saved money by not going. So, I couldn't tell you the exact point at which we are out of funds if things don't change. But I would say it's probably not too far down the road. So yeah, this forces you guys into a situation where you have to decide short term what you want to do about it, but also there's some implications longer term as well. but this has been going on for 20 years. We have an incredible relationship with the university in Inner Mongolia. Many of you guys on the board have been involved either first or second hand. And obviously there's a huge alumni of past members who have gone and whose experiences there have really changed their lives. And I think when I think about what makes a small high school marketable and what makes it unique, is that, like a small college might do, gives kids the opportunity to change their lives. And that's what the Journey East program does. It gives kids the opportunity to change their lives. And I can tell you, as a parent, having a kid gone through it a few years back, before I actually was principal, how impactful that has been on his life. So I'm sure others can speak as well to that.
Well,
Sons. Yep.
I'm sorry, but while that's all well and good, we're talking about impacting very few students and at a higher cost to the taxpayers, and it's something we should seriously look at.
Okay. Thanks,
Well,
Ken.
and Al, if I could just respond real quick.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
that.
sure.
There's a small number of students who go on the trip, but as Jesse pointed out, there's a huge number of kids who are impacted. The entire community is impacted when the Mongolians come here and visit here and live here and perform here. So I guess I would beg to differ with that perspective, Ken. As far as the kids who get to go, that number in retrospect is small comparatively to the entire population of our district, but the impact that the program has on ours is not just to those kids. I'll shut up now.
Thanks, Bob. I've got Paul and then Emily.
Through the mute thing. I don't want to sound like the Grinch. Like you said, you don't know me, and the people who do know me, I am a major, big deal proponent of international experiences for kids. I took my own kids backpacking around Europe. In this case, I taught English as a second language. I'm very much in favor of these programs, but there's a cost. You're talking about closing schools, elementary schools, for the population that's already here. If we are that tight for money, what is the total Chinese education program in the high school cost us, including not just the trip, but the entire Chinese language program? What does it cost us in the budget to support that particular program compared to what it's going to do if we have to start closing schools and busing kids 45 minutes or an hour to different kinds of schools? It just seems like there is a justifiable respect and love for this program, but it's not viable. We are asking people who are already strapped tax-wise to support a program that's just lovely, but they don't have the money for that. And they have no choice in voicing that, because this is something that the board, in the little bit I've watched, doesn't want to touch it because it's such a unique, nice to have program. If the citizens of Jamaica want to contribute to a program such as this, raise money, ask for funds. But you can't, I don't believe it's fair to ask a lot of people in fixed incomes to put their money into a program that doesn't benefit them specifically, although globally, I believe the citizenry, yeah, I get that. It's just that we're cutting to the bone. And this may be a lovely thing to have. I love the program. I think it's a great idea. I don't think the people of Jamaica, I can speak for, or the people maybe for the whole community, can afford to have lovely, nice to have programs when we're talking about closing schools and busing kids 30, 45 minutes all around the county. I'm a little concerned that concept of having to close programs, and maybe this isn't the only program, but that program is so sacrosanct that we can't even look at it. When I put the question out, I'm thinking in terms of the trip and the Chinese language, not just one or the other, the whole concept of how much is this costing us and how does that impact ultimately. And I'd love to know how much the Chinese language program costs us and how that compares to a budget where we're talking about closing schools.
Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 160,000 for between the language program and Journey East. Oh, you're on mute.
I believe that's correct. I would have to look back at what the principals proposed, but it's right around there.
And so if that number is accurate, and we found a way to come up with another 100,000 out of the admin, there's $200,000 that goes back into the budget. Is that going to be able to allow us to continue to provide the services to the kids we already have here, rather than busing them all over the community in the dead of winter, for example? When that's assuming we ever get to open the schools again, but the drift.
Thanks, Paul. Go ahead, Emily.
Thank you. I can't speak any more eloquently than Bob did about the Journey East program, but I'm going to just go out on a limb and say how important I think this program is for our communities, and most importantly for our students. And I'll just say that it is those students who have the least amount of access to programs such as Journey East that are going to be greatly impacted. And I think we should ask ourselves, what happens if we do cut those programs that drives students to come to Leland and Gray? And what is the impact on our taxpayers? We so often talk about the students or the taxpayers who are the most heavily impacted, the ones who can least afford to pay. But I just would caution you to remember that while I don't think our education funding formula is perfect, in fact, probably far from it. And I think we're in the cusp of making a lot of decisions around, or at least having some discussions and conversations about how we can improve the education funding system, which, by the way, those conversations are being driven by the very thing that are challenging us right now, which is the decline in our enrollment. And that isn't just us, it's everyone. So those conversations are ongoing, and they need to be. But the education funding formula that we have today, which is statewide, does allow those families who can least afford it to get a little bit of break and pay based on their income, as opposed to their property taxes. So I would just remind us about that, and think about all of our students who are really, they don't have the ability to take advantage of choice. They don't have the ability. We don't bus our kids all over the county. Right now, we do move our children around the West River District. And I think that that's something that we probably are going to have to continue to figure out how we're going to do. But it's better than busing the children who can afford, or moving the children who can afford to move and not moving the others. I just want to make sure that we are conscious of what the impact is on all of our communities that are served by, that Leland and Gray serves. And I'll let it go at that.
Thanks, Emily. So we have the, sorry, go ahead, Keegan.
Thank you. I'm recognizing the time, and I'm hearing some conversation around where we can make additional cuts to the budget, which we know is lean. And I would suggest, since we have to do some long-term planning anyway, and we need to redesign who we are as a school district anyway, beginning in April, I would propose that this board adopt is the wrong word. I would suggest that this board consider suggesting to our admin team that we remove from our budget the full-time administrator position, that would the current one that's split. And I would also suggest that for fiscal year 22, we suspend the Journey East local contribution and the Journey East staffing, the 0.05 position for fiscal year 22. That way we have the full year to have a serious hard look at what our programming ought to be, what our building structures can be. And we've also shown our communities a good faith effort and showing that we are willing to change, and not just infuse $300,000, but making a close to match at that. And that would be my recommendation. I think it shows some fiscal responsibility. I think it shows some hard conversation has taken place and that some decisions can be made. And then we have a year beginning on April 1st to, well, in March, by February, present a budget that is easier to tolerate by all communities that are involved in the West River Education District. Beginning in April, we can have a nice community-wide, robust conversation around values, value statements, what our hopes and dreams are for our kids. And the real work can begin, perhaps in fiscal year 23 through that reorganization. The, what is it, $61,000 from the Journey East program might be able to be redistributed or reallocated, or again, flushed in with funds from the reserve fund. But I would suggest, for the purposes of this evening, of having a budget that we can all support, I would propose that we consider the $300,000 infusion from reserve, in addition to the $110,000 for the admin position, as well as the Journey East program to be suspended for fiscal year 22.
So regarding the Journey East, the 61,000 is the, Lori, can you explain how and if we could do that? It doesn't, I don't believe that's feasible. Correct? Is
Have
it
a
like
Bill
over 2
hand, a
years?
Bob hand, and
Oh,
a
sorry.
Joe hand.
Bill,
Just so you
go
know.
ahead. I'm sure we'll get some answers here. Bill?
No, sure. I appreciate Keegan putting something out on the table. I would I would separate those investments that you talked about to Journey East. The 31,000, I'll defer to Lori about. That is a financial contribution to sustainability of the program. I think there's some more flexibility about whether or not we would invest that for a year to allow for that long-term conversation that you talked about. But the additional other 30,000 is a half-time person. And so I think that could be the death knell to the program, because that would be a person that would then leave and go find a full-time job. So I think for an additional 30,000, I think that second half of your suggestion has more impact than the first half. If it was the board's desire to find more money, I could provide a recommendation or a suggestion that would not do that.
I think I misunderstood how this was laid out. So thank you for that clarification, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
I would support that. You know, the suspending of the contribution, but not touching the staffing piece.
Go ahead,
Thanks,
Lori.
Keegan.
Thank you.
I didn't know if Bob wanted to go first, but I wanted to speak to the contribution.
Bob, did you want to go first?
Sure. I just want to say that I think one of the other things to consider, and it's an interesting point, and I know the complexities of this are deep and wide. Suspending the program for a year, let's assume that the virus is set and that that's not a factor. To suspend the program for a year could have major implications on the relationship with the Chinese. And I don't know how that would work. I mean, Jesse might be able to speak to that a little bit. They were incredibly excited. As you may know, the Chinese are very big on what's the phrase I'm looking for? Sort of the pomp and circumstance of events. And so the idea, they were very excited to be celebrating a 20th anniversary of this program and this partnership being developed. And that obviously they were going to come this fall, and that was going to be part of the 20th anniversary celebration, which was a really big deal for them culturally. And so to suspend the program could have major political implications on the future of the program, even if it's well-meaning to take a break. That could be also the death knell of the program. I just want to make sure, and I don't know that. Jesse, you can ask Jesse to speak to that a little bit more, and she may know or she may not know. But and it speaks also to the point I made at the budget committee meeting. Sometimes when when you suspend a program or you make a cut with the idea of maybe bringing it back, very rarely does that happen in the way that you intend. And so, if ever. And so I would just caution you guys about that this might not just be an interim decision, that what you could be doing is making a permanent decision, maybe even unintentionally.
Thanks, Bob. Good, Lori.
I just wanted to remind the board that the contribution last year of the 18,000 was cut from the budget. And if you cut the $31,000, as Bob indicated before, that he and Jesse came to the board a couple of years ago, and it will put the program as a whole in jeopardy if money is not continued to build up, because we haven't had those tuition students coming in. So I just want to make sure that the board is clear that there was a cut last year to the program, and potentially you've got out on the table a cut this year to the program.
Thanks, Lori. So I like your attempt to close out, Keegan. Sorry, go ahead.
I had my hand up.
Oh,
didn't you
sorry,
write
Joe.
down that list?
Sorry.
All right. So having listened to all this debate, I think we should just move. I think we can move, but I'll put this in motion form. I'd like to move that the board adopt a budget taking the $300,000 from the reserve fund to buy down the tax rate, and additionally eliminating the shared administrator position. I don't want to mess with the other two things, given their long-term implications and they're relatively small. I mean, we're talking about a total of $60,000 here that we're talking with defunding, with taking away a halftime position and eliminating a contribution. That $60,000 isn't going to change the tax rate probably a cent. Lori, say
Okay.
yes.
I'll second that motion.
So,
All right, we got a motion, we got a second.
Budget for it.
All right, discussion starting with the motion maker and second. Joe, did you say everything you needed to?
I think so. I just, I think that this is this is still a stopgap thing where we're using reserves, and the one cut that we're making does take us down the path of revamping our education system, and we need to do that. We need to borrow a word from Mr. Fraser. We need to look at all the sacrosanct things, not just programs, but I think buildings. Buildings may have to go. That may be the way to sustain this as a district. Those traditions, because we've had a school for 85, 100, whatever it is years, that may not be the way we go anymore. And we have to start looking at that kind of stuff, because that's not efficient. So anyway, that's
Thanks,
my
Joe.
motion. Thank you.
Emily?
Thanks. I don't need to say much more, just beyond the fact that I think that it's not the right time for us to gut that program, the Journeys program, for the small amount of savings that I think we'll see. And I think that this is a wake-up call for us to go back to what Drew Hazelton had mentioned earlier in the meeting, that we really need to have those hard conversations in our communities, in all our communities right now, starting right now, about what our future holds. But this program is really important, and it's really important to our students, and I don't want to see it eliminated.
Thanks, Emily. So Lori, just wanted to go back to that sheet if we could. So we're talking about $410,000. And if memory serves, that would put Townsend right around 206. If we dip into below 205, then love it or hate it, Townsend loses that hold harmless, correct? So, sorry, you're muted, Lori.
There we go. Trying to do two things at once. Potentially, it could. It depends on what happens with the yield. I mean,
right.
At 206 with 100,000, you're so close that if the yield goes up more than what I think it might go up, and I don't have the magic ball, then it's gone. So it's just, like I said, you were within a tenth of a penny basically before. So.
Okay, I just wanted to make the point that any further and we will lose a town in the whole for hold harmless. Got it. Joe, you want to help me out? I see Keegan's hand, of course. Got it. Go ahead, Keegan. Anybody else, Joe?
Emily, is your hand up or was that for the second?
Emily was up before mine.
It's up.
Okay. Emily, then Keegan.
Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask Lori, Lori, is there any way that we're going to be able to see when that, I mean, is there an update on that? I mean, we're so close on that line. There's just, it's a crapshoot.
No, I think
Okay. That's
yeah, no.
Thanks. Go ahead, Keegan.
I was just going to offer two thoughts. So the first is the 5% hold harmless is going to go away anyway. And so far, out of all of the towns that are part of this district, one of them has already been paying the full rate of the tax rate that this board has been putting forth to the communities. So while I can appreciate wanting to hold on to staying above that line, it's important. But I think it would feel different if we were all swimming in the same water. Might there be more willingness to wiggle around and talk about a hard budget conversation if we were all looking at the same property tax rate as opposed to this is what it is, but this is what it really is? So that's a thought that I have. But Lori, just to confirm, with the $410,000 reduction in the budget, what would the true tax rate, the unified tax rate be? I have a couple of numbers written down and I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to be looking at. Is it the $2.12 or the $2.22? $2.05?
No, so the unified tax rate where it all starts would be 206.
206.
Yeah, 205 and 205.7. And the then it flows down through the CLA, and you know, Jamaica, who we're talking about here, really has the fluctuation as 212 or 213, really rounding.
But the other towns within the district would not feel the same level of a pinch of $2.13. They would be working from that $2.06 plus their 5% hold harmless, and then whatever their CLA works into.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, the CLA is pretty harmful to Jamaica. And what was the other town that as well, Lori?
Brookline.
Brookline. Yeah, both 99 to 96%. That's a significant drop. And just to be clear, that indicates that they're selling at below market rate. Is that the?
Yes.
Okay.
Above. Yeah.
Above market rate.
You know, the interesting part that we found out recently is that the CLA only goes through March 2020. So really the impact of the pandemic and all the buying and selling hasn't really hit yet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year.
Yeah.
Ken has a hand.
You have Ken's hand.
Yeah. Anybody else? Ken, go ahead, Ken.
Okay, well, the hold harmless is going away next year anyway.
Thank you. Yes.
So let's not, so it's not like, you know,
2 years.
we're doing this, well, we're going to get a big tax increase this year. It's going to hit you next year because it's going to, whatever you're holding back now, it's going to equalize out next year and we're all going to get it one way or another.
That is correct, Ken. Which is why we're fighting so hard, and Emily can speak to this if she wants, about the weighting study and pushing as hard as we possibly can to, you know, remedy some of these inequities that have been built up over the last 20 years, which I know would be very beneficial to the majority of the towns in this district. So yes, they'll likely be phased in over several years, but it'll certainly help the tax rate.
You would see me nodding my head, but Joe turned my camera off and I can't turn it back on.
Thanks, Ken. Mike, did you have?
Sure. Should be able to turn it on.
I did. Yeah. I was kind of waiting for a chance to interject the waiting study because I did notice that there's a bill that's at least in the Ed committee now. I know we have Emily. We're fortunate to have Emily on our board and on this meeting, but I was also wondering if we maybe invite some of the other sponsors of the bill, like Carolyn Partridge and Laura Sibilia, to a upcoming meeting, and maybe we can kind of. It's hard for us and our taxpayers to know what the reality of that is, especially when it's just a newly introduced bill. So maybe Emily can speak to it now, and maybe we consider having some of our other representatives come in the future.
That's a great idea, Mike.
Kind of talk to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I totally agree with you. I don't know if it would be feasible for February based on the legislative schedule, but yeah, it'd be great to have them. It's a great call.
Don't ask them on a Tuesday though.
Yeah, we'll try not to have the meeting on a Tuesday. Yeah. Sorry, Emily. Joe, do I have any other hands?
No, I do not see any.
Okay.
Actually, I was going to raise my hand, but it takes me longer to do it. And I just want to mention that there is multiple conversations going on in the legislature at every level about education funding. And I just would offer that people should keep track of the conversations, and then just put out there that legislating remotely is really challenging, and it's proving to be, slow. So I'll just throw that out there as well. The waiting study is in, I believe, the Ed committee now, but there are other bills as well, including, I don't want to speak because I haven't looked at any legislation specifically for this, but I believe there's something about elimination of certain things for exemptions for certain things for excess spending threshold as well. And looking at the broader education funding system.
Thanks, Emily.
Can I just ask once? It's related tangentially, but I just want to check with Lori because she said something and I was like, wait a minute. So the CLAs that went down, if your CLA went down, that means the homes in your town are selling for more than you even thought they were worth. So the towns where like rich people are moving in, the taxes go up because the CLA goes down.
Well,
Is that,
I'm not sure if it's because rich people are moving in.
Where there are big home sales, where people are moving in and buying homes for more than the town thought they were worth, that drives the tax rate up because it theoretically means that the property values are low.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Basically.
Okay. So Brookline and Jamaica have had properties sell for more than they were assessed at. So those, gotcha. Okay. Because I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, but I had to think it out in my head. Thank you, Lori.
Good question. All right. Do we have any other questions, or are we ready to vote? No. All right. So let's do a roll call, and everybody could make sure that they're, if able. Yes, thank you. Leanne, could you? Leanne,
if it works, it works. It doesn't, it doesn't. I'm in and out the whole meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay. We'll hope that you can be there to vote. All right, let's start with Keegan.
Yes, yay.
And Joe.
Yay.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Thank you. Dana.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Leanne.
Yes.
Thank you. Mike.
Yes.
Howie.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anybody that I missed? Oh, Trish. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. I think that is everybody. The motion carries unanimously. Thanks, everybody. That was a great discussion and certainly a prelude to many more discussions that we're going to be having this spring and throughout the rest of the year. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Al,
Sure.
could I make a request that before you go to section B of new business, that we allow our student to make their report so that they could have the rest of the evening for themselves?
Absolutely, yes. Let's be mindful of those students that need to get to bed. Totally agree.
Thank you.
Hi, Abby Hazelton. I'm here.
Hi, Abby.
I mostly just wanted to say that I hope that Leland Gray is able to go back in person soon, especially as the second semester starting and hopefully the second half of my senior year is somewhat in the school building, I guess. And then I also think that Journey East sets Leland Gray apart in a lot of ways. So I would really be about keeping that in the budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. That was great. Appreciate it. Yeah, and we also wish very much for you to be able to get back to school live and in person. Bob, did we have Bill, did we have anybody else? Abby,
No, you can go back to the regular agenda. I just wanted to make sure that the student had an opportunity to report and be done.
Appreciate it. All right, Abby, you can go to bed now. Yeah, right. Maybe back to your homework. All right. Yes. Okay. Moving on to request for board member to be on advisory panel. So
I can
yes,
share a little bit more about that.
go ahead, Keegan.
So I was approached a few weeks ago and I was asked to attend a meeting by the current school clinician who has some ideas around what the role of a school-based social worker could be and what the scope of what that role currently looks like and then how it could be leveraged in a different way. It's just an advisory panel. There's no major decision-making happening as of right now. But I was asked if I would consider filling the seat and acting as a representative of the board. I have a great deal of passion for how a student experience coming from trauma or having a generational poverty experiences and finding new and innovative ways to help families and students access resources. And when I was offered the opportunity to attend, I would love to be a part of supporting that work. But because I would be serving as a representative of the board, I wanted to make sure that I had permission to attend those meetings, take notes, and on occasion offer feedback or invite this woman to come join us and share with the full board what her hopes and dreams are.
Great. Thanks, Keegan. So what is the mission of the advisory panel?
It was really designed by, I'm going to pull up my information sheet. Hold on 1 second. I apologize. Oh, and now it's going to be slow internet time at the Eaker house. Just one moment, I do apologize. I had it open this whole time, but. Hold on, I need to make my one screen larger. Talk amongst yourselves if you don't mind. All right. Her name is Susan. Let me just pull up my notes here. All right, so it's an advisory panel. It was the first meeting regarding the role of a school-based social worker. The folks that were in attendance, it was led by Susan Gunther Moore. And part of her hope is to provide her experiences with the role of, or like the services that can be provided by a school-based social worker and how they are needed within the West River Education District. Currently, her time is split between 5 schools, and she had asked that this advisory panel help her kind of come together to figure out additional ways that either her time could be better allocated or allocated differently so that she could reach and meet the needs of more students in her capacity without, like, basically she was hoping to have some direction around what would help her have a more clinical role as opposed to a clerkial role, and then what other additional resources might be available through the state as opposed to through a local experience. So our next upcoming, well, we met on January 5th for an informational introductory meeting, and she has another meeting planned for February. And I figured that before I committed to attending that next meeting, I would find out from you folks if it would be okay for me to participate and maybe help brainstorm some alternative routes to helping students and families access needed resources. And again, I apologize for the slowness of the page to load.
No problem. I'm sure there are other questions, but so just so I understand, so this is somebody who currently works for the WCSU or the WRED and is seeking the advice of an advisory panel separate from that?
In addition to Susan Gunther Moore, she also has a regional school psychologist, another school-based clinician, a veteran social studies teacher, and me, a school board member. So she's got a few community members that I think she wants to have all on board, kind of co-planning or kind of reviewing what's the current state of a school-based social worker, what are the current needs of the West River Education District as far as having that role filled, and is it, like, to what degree is it necessary, and then how can we leverage that role differently in a more equitable way.
Okay, I see Joe's hand.
Yeah, so I'm confused. This is an advisory committee that's being formed to advise who?
Susan Gunther Moore. It's her own.
It's going to advise an employee about things that she can do where she already works.
Yes, that's.
And
that's
she's gathered people who don't work in our district to help her advise about what she can do within our district.
With people that have a similar role to hers.
I don't understand the board function on that as well. And the other thing is, where is, obviously there's a chain of supervision within the West River Education District. Is that represented on this?
Like I said, I attended an information meeting because she had invited me to attend, and I wanted to learn more. So the information I have is pretty basic at this point. It sounds like she is interested in having a better understanding of what her role is compared to similar roles in other schools, and trying to find new ways to enhance her position so that she can support more students.
Okay, so I understand someone going out professionally to look for that information. I don't understand what member a board role. I don't understand what role a board member would play in that, because we don't have any knowledge about the mental health needs of the students within our district. We have professionals who take care of that. It's our responsibility to provide those professionals, but I don't understand what advice per se a board member would be giving on this panel. I'm not sure that board representation is something that this panel needs or is even appropriate based on the description.
Okay. Well, like I said, if you're not, if you would not like me to participate, then I don't have to. I was just interested in the topic. I would love to support an employee who wants to better herself professionally. But if you don't think that that's an appropriate role for me, that's entirely okay. And I can let her know that I won't be attending in February.
It sounds more like a networking opportunity. Like I've done this as well in the past, where you network with people that are in similar jobs. The advisory piece, I know I can hear it in Joe's voice. He's getting hung up on that, and also the representation of the board. I mean, I would think if it's a networking thing, there's probably nothing wrong with that. But I don't. I would also agree about the probably not as a representative of the board. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that or questions?
Could she do it as an observer? Not in an official capacity of the board, but as an observer?
You can do it as Keegan, and
yeah,
the fact that Keegan sits on this board is absolutely no bearing on that. This doesn't give that group a voice here or us a voice there. It's, if you want to go do this in your private time, help yourself to happiness. But it's not on behalf of the West River Education District.
All right, I'm happy to let her know that I'm happy to support her, but not in the capacity as a representative of the West River Education Board. No worries.
I think you would have a lot to offer just being as a teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great networking opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll let her know. And if she still wants me, great. If not, I'll defer her to connect with our board leadership to let her know the ins and outs of the explanation as to why. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Keegan.
Thanks.
There's a hands up.
Oh, Ken's hand
up. Ken? Sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
That's all right. I just raise my hand every time Joe looks down. No, seriously. So wouldn't this more be a question for our administration if this is Bill, can you weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm concerned that the individual's supervisor was not informed, and they did not inform me. I will be following up.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
Good question. Thanks, Ken. All right. Moving on to old business. HVAC workflow updates.
Very quick, nothing has really changed dramatically. As Abby alluded to, work is being finished Thursday and Friday at Leland and Gray as we move towards getting them in person and having air testing next week. So we will be having a lift on site next week, followed by air testing, and hopefully still on pace for our February 8th opening of Leland and Gray. I will have my fingers crossed that nobody has to go into quarantine that will be providing any of these services, but there's everything that's in our control is moving forward as much as we can, but we can't control the pandemic or the reaction of employees to the pandemic that are doing work that are necessary to do the air testing to get the results to be able to let people in on February 8th.
Thanks, Bill. Fingers crossed. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of December 21st meeting.
So moved, Ken McFadden.
I'll second it, Dana West.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate it. Any discussion? No? All right, all those in favor say aye, or thumbs up, sorry. Think we can, oh, Emily did the virtual thumbs up. All right. Carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we did student reports. did everybody get a chance to read the principal reports and superintendent cabinet report? And do we have any questions, thoughts, comments, reactions? Mike, I think you have your hand.
Nope.
No, oh, sorry.
Nope.
Came off mute. Anybody, Joe?
No.
All right. Communication committee update.
So we currently have our communications liaison, Suzanne Pa, needs a massive shout out. She has updated our website so that the WestRiverEd.org is now live and lively and fairly easy to navigate. So I'm incredibly proud of the work and the time that she's put into it. I think the feedback that we've been hearing is it's a little bit easier to find information, although sometimes information does make it there earlier than intended, but we will work on that. So yeah, we will be meeting, I would anticipate once we have this board meeting is concluded, we'll have a few updates to like what the next budget, the second draft, the one that'll be going towards or being shared with our communities. We'll love to we will have to do some more work around designing some basic infographics, running that by the executive team of the board, just to make sure that all of our information is accurate with Lori's approval. And if there is areas where you would like to have additional information or modified information or extensive explanations around different pieces, we will have all of that information available and posted so that our communities can read it, mull it over, and be ready to pass our school budget in a couple of months. So we don't have a new communications team meeting scheduled yet, but it will be coming soon and we will warn it. And of course, everyone is welcome to come.
Thanks, Keegan. Yeah, so I would love it if Suzanne could update that infographic sorry, did I mess it up?
No, you just reminded me. I had actually asked Suzanne if at one of our future board meetings, if she would be willing to come in and review with the board the work that she's done on the website. That way we can kind of see all of the new and improved organizational strategies. So I'm hoping maybe in February or sometime.
Yeah,
future
I
board
think that's a great idea. Absolutely. So yeah, if you want to have her update the infographic with all of the current information, everything that we just decided tonight, the 410,000, obviously run it same as last time, run it by Lori, make sure the numbers are right, send it to Joe, Mike, and myself, and love to get that information out quickly. So yeah, appreciate it. I love the infographic. It's very nice. Great design. Joe, did I miss anything?
You have Dana's hand.
Dana?
I know Joe had some concern. Do we need to make an official that we agree with the website, an official decision that it's okay? I know we threw it out there launched it before it was ready. I mean, the board had made an official, yay, thumbs up, it's good to go. Or do we have to do any of that, or is that okay? We passed by it, or?
I'm sorry, what were we referring to? Joe, do you?
The first infographic that went up.
Oh.
Approval by the budget committee.
Dana, it wasn't about the website. Yeah, it was about.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the infographic got sent to us, and then, we were like, oh yeah, great, let's review it at the budget committee meeting, and it went.
Well, I got the impression like we took off with Dad's car without Dad's permission. So
no, the bottom half of that is just a little unclear. It could even be hyperlinks depending on how well the person that you have doing most of the work can manipulate that. It's just some of the bullet points on the bottom are hard to explain. And I sit on the budget committee, so I was like, well, let's flesh that out a little bit. But we'll get that worked out.
Great. Yeah. So no, you didn't steal Dad's car.
No.
Yep. All right, moving on to Joe, Budget Committee update.
I
In
don't,
30 seconds or less. No, I'm kidding.
unless, unless something horrible happens in February, we're not meeting anymore. We're done. Thank you all for your service and hard work. And thank you again to the administration team for going down that budget exercise road. We discussed that at length at the Budget Committee, that was extremely painful and difficult work to do for them and for all the teachers and staff and people involved in that. And you know, we appreciate the professional way in which it was handled, and we're sorry that we had to ask you to do it. And that's it.
Thanks, Joe.
Do you have the pay order sheet? Because I'll make a motion to approve them. I did review them and sign off, and I don't know if Trish did or not.
I don't have the sheet and Lori lost her internet, so.
Oh, no.
All right. Push it to the next one.
We don't have the amounts for the pay orders.
I have the sheet that Terry emailed me.
I reviewed, I just need to sign, my Adobe was acting up today, so I just haven't had a chance to actually sign it and get it back to her.
Oh, Lori's back. Maybe we can get the number.
I'm back, but it'll take me a few minutes to get the number. I thought Joe said he has it.
Well, it's $143,250.10 from the general fund, and
that's all you have to approve.
There's some from special revenue.
Yeah.
So then the total is 143,424.50.
You only have to approve the general fund.
Okay. So 143,250.10. I'll move to approve that.
Second,
I'll second it.
discussion.
Dana.
Thank you, Dana. Any discussion? No? All right, thumbs up. Favor? Thank you. Motion carries. And I've been informed that we do not have a need for executive session tonight. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Bill?
No, just you can expect on February 15th that I will have a master agreement for you all to ratify.
Fantastic. Great.
From what year, Bill?
For this year and next year. So we'll start talking again in the fall.
Thanks, Bill. All right, next meeting is on, is it February 15th? February 15th. All right, I'll entertain that motion that somebody definitely wants to make.
Move to adjourn. Ken
Second.
McFadden.
Second?
I seconded.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Count
All those
on
in
Mike.
favor? All those in favor, thumbs up.
Yep.
Everybody have a great night. Great job.
You
And,
too.
go get some rest.